So the human upgrade. I'm going to focus on the first two sections of this, and nutrigenomics is interesting in that we probably have known for at least 10 to 15 years, the people who've known this the most are the kind of gastroenterology doctors, the one who specialise in gut symptoms, inflammatory bowel disease, that you can have a certain sort of genetic profile that responds better to certain diet types or not, and that you can see that in kind of, certainly the work that I do, I tend to see people very much within the realm of their own genetics, what their sort of ethnic background is, what their sort of family history is, what do mum and dad look like, what do the grandparents, if they're all tall and lean and built, and what kind of diet did they grow up in, that plays a fact into how their kind of body will respond to different dietary interventions. Nutrigenomics takes that one step further, which is this concept that you can switch on or switch off genetic expression by putting yourself into quite sort of drastic dietary interventions. And that does make sense, although I suppose the only thing is that in some cases that involves people cutting out whole macronutrient groups, so people cut out completely carbohydrates. Now, I know that carbohydrates are the devil, even though winter's coming, but I think it's important to remember that your body cannot function without some form of carbohydrate. So to completely cut that out in a non-sort of supervised way is probably not the most sensible thing. Having said that, I do sympathise with people who go and see their doctor, and whether they spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's quite obvious there is, they have looked into something in so much more detail than their clinician. They just say, you know what, he's obviously not listening, he or she are not listening to what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna have a go at this myself. DIY pathology is a bit more interesting. Both these things are kind of much more US driven, certainly at the moment. DIY biology is this concept that people who come from a basic science background, so they might have done chemistry, biology, etc., or worked in a genomics lab, will then take that information and try and use with a team of people to kind of basically biohack in some essence or form, and that's using sharing information. I think in the US you can understand there's a bit sort of cynicism about doing anything that's genetic or basic science led, because often you have to do it either within an institution, university, or within a pharmaceutical laboratory, and both those people have their own sort of agenda. So that's a much more common, that's kind of, it makes sense why people are starting to do that. Again, with DIY biology, the theory is that you can take a number of genetic profiles and then try and test these interventions on them. So I could say that, my genetic profile might be quite similar to yours, so we're going to try and do a slight variation of the two and then work from there. In theory, it's great. The issue is that, as anyone who's done any sort of basic science research, is that 1 micrometer change in your dosing, etc., can completely ruin your results. So I think it can give perhaps some false hope to people as to what they're doing may then be able to be extrapolated for many other people. I won't talk about Grindr, but it's definitely the most interesting of the three, so if you've got the time, I will Google it. Grindr, I'm not sure we have a great deal of time, no.
Sorry, can you just quickly define it? I've never
So Grindr is this concept that you can biohack yourself by implanting things, implantation. And I mean, this is basically where it comes from, and this is pretty cool, pretty scary, but pretty cool, and this kind of concept that not only can we optimize what's going on inside of our bodies, physical and mental, but also that we can kind of augment our bodies, which is, not so different to wearables or technology. I heard from someone earlier, they're going to talk about tech-based clothing, so it's kind of expanding that one step further. It is not without its risk, though. Implanting magnets into your fingertips and trackers into your chest wall can come with certain health problems. And I suppose that leads me, disclaimer, I suppose that leads me on to kind of my final few points, which is that, biohacking is basically what we try and do at FICOR every day, which doesn't sound anywhere near as sexy as biohacking, which is that we're trying to use sensible interventions, which is sleep, nutrition, movement, mental well-being, to try and optimize both physical and mental performance. I think biohacking is focused much more on performance. I'm much more focused on well-being, and I'm much more focused on restoration, which is I look at people and say, how can we get you to doing something, being in a body that you like, in a body that performs for you, but something that can do that for the next sort of 50 years of your life, not just for the next 5 weeks. And I suppose the dangers, it's so obvious that I'm a clinician because we're all about the dangers, is that some of these things are very sort of supervised, but also I think one of the biggest things about wellness interventions is that there is this habit that something that works for you, you think will work for other people. And unfortunately, often that's not the case. Everyone is very individual, and we're moving into an era of medicine where we are being much more, tailored interventions. So instead of putting 1,000 people with a stroke on the same medication, we now do look at genetics in cancer therapy, and we say you're going to respond better to this drug, you're going to respond better to that drug. So in the future, we'd expect that lifestyle interventions will follow this kind of quite similar, tailored, genomic-based therapy. I'm going to end there because I think I've definitely run over.
I think we're going to